Hi, everyone, and welcome to our epic expert interview today. And we have with us Portia D. Sykes. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So your website says Portia Sykes, author, activist, healer. So let's start with author. We know that you wrote Eat the Moon, which we recommended in the July-August issue of Epic magazine. So how about we start with you giving people a little synopsis of what they can look forward to reading your novel?
Well, the book is a part of a bigger deal, but I've always wanted to write. I always knew I was going to write. I hadn't planned on writing. I had a clinic in Farmington taking care of people in pain and doing nutrition and detoxing, and I was happy. And then I realized that I wasn't as up to date on our climate situation, and decided that was kind of dumb to be smart and not as well informed as I could be. I knew a lot, I had studied, I had practiced, but I hadn't really looked at it in a while. So I started researching, and it's unpleasant. As a writer, I'm really good with adjectives, but we're going to use the word unpleasant. There's other adjectives that could be used.
Plenty.
Plenty of other adjectives. And I got motivated. There was a book called Climageddon, and it was about how to survive and fight back the global warming emergency. And when I got done reading it, it said there's 6 different ways to respond. You can deny it's happening because you are overwhelmed and you're just not thinking about it. You can deny because you don't think the science is right, or because you profit from denial. But this author, Lawrence Wallerstein, wrote that there's 3 ways to respond if you do accept. Well, you can still do nothing because you feel overwhelmed. You can accept it's happening and only focus on your own family, or you can accept and do everything in your power. And the book came into me at like a molecular level. That it was kind of a soul promise. Like, I have a lot more power and I'm not using it as good as I should. And I spent the last 20 years trying to get people out of pain and to get the garbage and toxins out. People don't even know how poisoned they are. But it's so hard to help people because the larger institutions and structures, we're not in a good system, and it's not really good for the planet either. So I kind of saw how I could incorporate my desires as a holistic physician and my activism with my background in literature and marry it together. And so I kind of got absorbed by this book. And so in your question, you were asking me about the synopsis. It's but I wanted it to be problem solving. If I'm a problem solver, I wanted the book to be problem solving. So I have a hippie commune girl and an oil and gas boy, and they're put into a circumstance where it's a little shakes them up, but it puts them together, and they kind of realize they have more in common than they had realized. And it develops as the oil and gas character kind of learns more about the climate and starts to experience the emotions of fear and anger and overwhelm. You kind of get to walk through that emotions with the characters, but their ultimate goal is to come together. It's not about anger. It's not about tearing us apart. It's not about beating each other up. It's about fixing this stuff. And so I've got 2 more books to write in the series. This is what the universe told me. And I'm working on book 2 will be more urban and more technological. Eat the Moon is more rural and nature. And so to problem solve, we're a complex organism in some ways, humanity. And I also I did the book in the same time, realizing that the solutions that I was suggesting for people to do, I had to start with me. So I
Yep.
began, so I was doing a lot of good stuff. I can't tell people to be more civil and be more respectful and not become more civil and respectful myself. I couldn't ask other people to become more informed if I did not then become more informed myself. So anyway, one solution. Maybe you guys can have some questions you can ask me.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there.
I know.
Well, I completely agree with you. I think that we're finding ourselves in a situation where we're faced with a media that's very reductionistic, which is feeding into this divisiveness. And when you mentioned healthcare, like you said, there are certain structures and systems that actually profit from, what's happening. And of course, we have a system that profits from people being sick. So there's a lot to unpack. I'll let Lisa jump in here and ask something.
Yeah, well, I loved the book. I thought it was fabulous. I think everyone should read it. I think it's just interesting the way in which you wrote it. I love Saffron and Colton and Zia. I like all the characters. I wanted to ask you just a little bit about that, like kind of moving a bit away from the fact of the matter that yes, we're going to discuss climate change at a deeper level, but from a creativity standpoint, I wanted to kind of ask about that and have you unleash that a little bit for people as well. What's it like to develop those characters and the dialogue and still keep those references in mind about telling a story that is actually our story now and how you can build in all of these profound opportunities for people to realize that it's not just Colton and Saffron and Zia and everyone else going through it. It's us going through it. And how do we take the tidbits of wisdom and experiences from those characters and apply them to our journey?
Well, it helps that I'm a voracious reader. I've never stopped reading. So wisdom and answers come to all of us at different times. There's a lot of amazing wisdom in the world. And so I didn't write this book alone. I mean, I used other people's insights and knowledge. And so I kept looking at what are the problem solving, what are some of the solutions, and trying to put it in there. And I did a lot of purification and soul cleansing and grounding. And I remember taking my book to Ojo Caliente and sitting in the waters as the Tibetan monks from Taos blessed the water. And after they left, there was a native man who sang in pool after pool as if to say, that's great, monks, but, these waters know my songs. And I went to the mountains and wrote under the stars, and I went to churches, and so I kind of tried to let some of divinity speak through me. But it was interesting because I said, I've always wanted to write. I've always read, I've had literature classes, I've had writing classes, but I took a different path. And so it's kind of like origami. You have to take these different ideas and then shape them and fold them, and you're taking 5D ideas and 3D ideas, and you're putting it through this veil, and then you're having it come out the other side as people and locations. And so the process of writing is fascinating. But in a lot of ways, you're opening up to a muse, to a story that wants to be told, especially if you're opening up and allowing that to come through. And so, like I said, I always felt guided. Whenever I felt lost, man, answers came to me. Go this direction. Here's a book about peace. Okay, good. I was just trying to figure out how to cut off their heads. Great. Give me a book about peace. Let's put peace in the book. And so that was and I had really great friends who read it. I had excellent readers who would give me feedback and help to inform the book. And I asked a lot of questions of strangers and I just talked to people about it for 4 years. I'm sure there's going to be amazing stories about the crazy Portia stories for the next few years about, oh my God, I had a conversation with her too, and she was insane. But I don't know. It takes a village. It wasn't all my ideas. It was great.
Well, you just cut off a little bit at the end there because your internet connection's going in and out a little bit, but you just said it wasn't all your ideas, and it was
a lot of grace. It was a lot of and again, it was interesting. Whenever I started to get angry, to get fearful, those were blockages. And when I was able to see the good stuff in life and see that I'm not alone and see that other people are working on it and ask for help, those little tidbits, boy, the dams would open, and what I needed to know, what I needed to hear, what I needed to learn, all just came.
Just a quick follow-up to that too. Are these characters, all of them pieces of you or pieces of people in your life, or were they just, they just came out of the ethers and took on like a symbolism of archetypes or something?
There's archetypes a go-go. There's mythology and archetypes a go-go in the book. But I feel blessed that I have lived in small towns, and I've lived in big cities, and I've known academia and intelligentsia, and I've known very just simple, regular folk, people poor and all. And so it kind of hit me, why have I had those circumstances? Why have I had those relationships? And so I put a lot of them in the book. So yes, it is a lot of me and conglomerations of different people that I've met and known. So yeah, they're all mixtures. And the second book is going to have a billionaire character and a veteran. So I get to spend this winter reading about war and economics. Aren't you jealous?
Okay.
Well, I think, as humans, we obviously communicate through story. And as we're telling stories, we are also kind of creating the future. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there right now talking about story and telling the stories that we would like to see, versus staying in the energy of, what's wrong. I mean, clearly here with climate, we have to face that first. Like we actually have to face there is something incredibly, incredibly wrong. And then when we gather ourselves, we can come into a place of, okay, well, what's the story that we want? Because even if we could continue down this path of sort of unchecked growth, do we even want that? And so talk a little bit about how you see the current book and the ones that are coming. Like, what's the role that they play in getting people to have those difficult conversations and stirring things up?
Well, it's interesting because when I was writing the book, when you're supposed to write a book, you're supposed to know who your audience was. And my husband, who's your audience? And I remember telling him, everybody. I want to talk to everybody, from I think anyone from 18 to 98 should find something in my book. I structured it that way. I'm 50. I'm right there in the middle between 100-year-old people and newborns. I am in this weird way of understanding a lot of the psychology and culture of people who are older than me, and yet seeing the younger group. And I would love to see recognition and togetherness, working together between older people, younger people, because all the things that we're capable of achieving varies from person to person. So my book, I hope it just inspires someone to go, I've been hearing a voice in my head saying I should be doing something constructive, more positive. If you're hearing that voice, you should absolutely follow it. You should listen. If your voice is telling you to be angry and you're coming from fear, I don't think that's a good message. I think you need to go deeper into how you're being inspired. As far as how, when I wrote it, I started in 2017, and one of the first things that the Trump White House did was, the very first thing, they got rid of the White House's climate change website, and he got rid of their ethics department. So while I was writing this book, I was in a major state of panic that we were not discussing the subject and it's being overrun. And so I first wrote it trying to get more people to talk about it. And then the pandemic hit, and the book was pretty much done. And it was that earthquake shakeup. Like, where does this, my version of reality is now completely different from where our world is taking us. But I think there's going to be so many lessons to unpack from the situation that we're all in, that it's not my job to make the world a better place. It's not yours, it's ours. And each of us is being called. And so I think what I'd like the book to kind of bring to people's minds is that we are all working on this together, and our mindset about it matters, and the consequences of our actions matter. So what are we doing? So, and not to be a Debbie Downer, but there's also the possibility that things won't go the way we want. And the book will inform future generations that, there were people that tried, which is, on the bad days that I feel that way. On the good days, I'm like, okay, this book can go and do whatever it's supposed to do. I don't really feel in charge of it. It's supposed to go and do what it's supposed to do. I'm in the middle of trying to create positive actions in the real world, because the book is just one step. What are we doing in the real world to make our food better, make our energy use conversation, what are we doing on these things that will impact us as neighbors? That's kind of where I'd like to inspire people to get into, action mode.
And I think the truth is, we're actually doing a lot of those good things.
Yeah.
We're just not hearing about them in traditional forms of media. That form of media is still very focused on propagating fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll, continue to do that to try to get as much out of the old paradigm way as they possibly can, because they know it's actually crumbling.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that sort of urgency, like I really feel like I have to do something. And when I actually did the Pachamama Alliance Game Changer Intensive, which is like a 9-week course, and you're meeting in small groups and, really kind of talking and getting into the nitty gritty and all about climate change and race and, all the stuff that's happening. And so, there's definitely avenues that people can take. And that overwhelm is really just a function of the fear, I think, that's being propagated.
And it does feel like we kind of switched in a timeline, it is being discussed more, and it is coming out. But what do I want to say? I'm hopeful, and I'm more hopeful than I was several years ago. But at the same time, the work's just gotten started in so many ways. There's a lot to be done. But yes, the people coming together, and it's not all going to be solved with politics. Our legislative process is important, there's a lot to be done with legislative, but that's not the only power that we each embody. We each have, we're accountable for our own kind of choices in the world. So kind of talking about those and opening up these discussions is where it's going to be. Another thing about talking about race, this book is very white in a lot of ways. Book 2 will have a lot more diversity of characters. I definitely don't want to only tell a white person story, because we're only a portion of the population, so there's a lot that can be done by healing our how we treat different people who are different from us. And I did put a little sex in the book because of these struggles between male and female that I wanted to address. And so that's why there is sex in the book. There's also sex in the book because nobody really wants to read about climate change or our problems. So I thought, well, shoot, if I put sex in it, people might actually read it. So
everybody loves a love story. Everybody loves a love story.
Yeah. And, I'm here in San Juan County, and I have shared my book with conservatives and with more liberal people, and nobody's giving me flack, and nobody is coming down on me. It seems to be receptive. I wrote it because I didn't want to have bad guys. I wanted it to speak to people from a lot of different backgrounds. So so far so good, but it's written to kind of inspire people from wherever they're at.
I think it does that. I think you did a wonderful job really setting the stage to not make anyone the bad guy and to give people a lot of food for thought as to what they're doing in their own lives and how maybe generationally they've been affected and not maybe thought about solving problems themselves because it's something their family did previously. So that's great. Kudos to that. And can you give people some like action steps? We're talking about it, but give them maybe the top 5 action steps they can take to become more engaged in this process of change.
Honestly, the solutions are there. There's many. So to me, one of the fastest things, instead of me reinventing the wheel, is jump in the rabbit holes and, as the character Colton, Google climate solutions. and it's not going to be just one thing. It's going to be lots of little things with some big ones thrown in for measure. So, I, with my background with anatomy and physiology and nutrition, food for me is one of the biggest ones I can tell people. Food is getting transported, and the carbon footprint of food is just, there's the boxes and the cans and all the people who, to get an item of food from a grocery store involves like a lot of different resources and people and dynamics. Putting, this Christmas time, I suggest people buy seeds, get their gardening books, order tools, get things that last, get control of your food and make it more local, make it more seasonal, and more natural. We don't need the chemicals, because the chemicals go into the foods, they go into our body, and then they go back into the environment, and we still didn't deal with it. It's still out there. So you have to think about how. So when I tell people to deal with, treat them, we'll start with themselves. I think one of the focuses for the next few years is we need to heal physically, mentally. There's so much traumas that we've got to come over. I think we need to heal emotionally, get over a lot of these emotions that we have that aren't really serving us. and, try to get beyond fear, get beyond anger. If you're a mom, you can be mad, but you still have to clean stuff up. You still have to get into your right mind and be effective. So that's something I think people need to focus on. And maybe some spiritual healing and sexual healing. So the 5 dimensions, I think if we focus on our own healing, then we'll buy less. We'll be nicer to people. We won't need the drugs. And so, yeah, it's kind of I'm suggesting an internal commitment to improve. And then your choices, you can see where your choices will start to add up.
And I would add in there, cutting back on technology. There's the right use of technology, and then, there's basically the attention economy of us just, going down a rabbit hole that we don't really need to go down. So I think that plays into it. I totally agree about food. I think that this industrial farming that we've been doing for the last half a century, it's contributed so much to environmental degradation, the degradation of human health. And, it's like everything comes together, there's a confluence where people start to understand how their physical health is related to the environment and the food they eat. And that's really the whole idea behind E.P.I.C. I mean, that when we first started it, like that was the whole idea, is to get people to understand spirituality, health, sustainability. These are not separate things.
No.
I mean, we use that linguistically just as a convenience, but this is, all about the choices that you make and understanding your impact. But yeah, farming and regenerative farming. And we're, I think, fairly lucky where we live to have access to so many great farmers markets and sustainably farmed meats and that kind of thing. So we are super lucky. And to go back to race, I think that's partly a function of white privilege that we get to enjoy some of the things that we do here in Durango.
Yeah, you talked about the second book being more urban based, and that's great. We're going to reach a broader audience and have more people understanding it's going to affect everyone regardless. And I'm a big proponent of, like, how do we educate these younger kids? So I know that the current book's not necessarily appropriate for a younger audience, but and it sounds like the Hot Mess trilogy is what your 3 books are called. So that they may not be, but would you consider or be open to, the universe asking you to write something that is more appropriate for the younger kids so that they can get it and pitch in their ideas? I mean, I see on YouTube or, things written that these kids that are 5 and 6 years old, they're getting it. They're like, why are we using that plastic XYZ, and the parents are like, oh yeah. So they're kind of coming in with some of this knowledge, but how do we get that more into even, mainstream education system? I mean, that's the issue. Our education system is not teaching ways in which we can improve our lives, our health, humanity, the environment, etc.
We are not going to be without work for the next few years. We've got, there's a lot to accomplish. But yes, I do want to write a health book. I spent 20 years touching people and dealing with bad necks and backs and joints, and I have a lot to say. And so I'm going to try to get to a point to get that information, that I used to spiel to get it out into the world. But there's already, again, there's not many original ideas. And so right now, I'm not encouraging people to go and spend a whole lot of money. we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's nonprofits that are already doing a lot of this work. You could support them. You could get books at the library or watch videos. They're available. And so in some ways it's like, I don't know, I'll get to it, but it's already out there. Just go look. So I don't know. I think we do involvement with community leaders, with, school boards and town halls. They are not high on my list of, yay, let's go do that. But at the same time, I think that engagement with each other is part of the next part of the work.
Well, it's on somebody's list, right? Because like you said, it's like we don't each have to do it all, because if we think we do, we go into overwhelm. But we each have something that is unique to us that we can contribute. So if you are somebody who likes to go to the town hall meetings and then that's your that's your thing to do.
Well, I look at it as I wrote the book to be a pebble in a pond. Okay, we can always put something good out into the universe and just watch it go. I don't know who it's going to hit. I don't know who it's going to resonate with, but I also have the faith that it will, and somebody else will have that aha moment and take up that job, take up that role. And I'm doing my own work, and each of us, I think there's a calling going on. We're being called to do what we're our highest selves are trying to tell us to accomplish.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about the muse and opening up, and it's kind of like whether we write a book or not doesn't really matter if it's not our particular pebble in the pond, but that process of opening up, because those ideas are out there. The innovation that exists for where we need to go next is out there. And what we need is, to help raise consciousness and help people open up so that they can find out what their unique contribution actually is.
People need to ask, it's like the ripple effect will happen. It's like, if you ask, what is your highest purpose? How can you make change in your life that will improve the world? All the things you mentioned, be kinder to people, all those kinds of things. It's like, yeah, I think it's Michael Beckwith, right, Lori, that says the idea sphere, every idea that's ever known in the universe is out there, and it's just waiting for someone to say yes to it. So
100%.
I think that, people should get the book. They should read the book because it's entertaining, it's informative, and maybe it will inspire them to be open to the idea sphere of what their potential is and how they can help change the world for the better and be inspired by it.
Thank you.
I want to go back to something you said in the beginning as well, about when people get thrown together in a situation and finding out that they actually have more in common. And I have for years been saying, I actually think that is our salvation, is that we start paying attention to what our own direct experience is and less attention to what the media is telling us our experience should be. Because when we come together with neighbors, we are naturally helpful, and we are naturally collaborative and caring and kind. And so I actually think that this is a bit of a matter of uncovering what's already there.
In some of the research, I mean, I've read some really horrific prognosis and predictions about what's coming, but some of the things is that even if it does break down and you do have somewhat collapse, boy, as soon as it's over, people come together. So our natures are more, I believe our natures are more good than evil. We are not, I know that indifference and apathy, and we have all these reasons for maybe not loving each other like we should. But it is our nature to kind of come together. And I think our nature is to benefit each other. And I had an epiphany while writing the book that I actually do love everybody I've ever met. It was a profound little moment where I like, even the people I was maybe angry at, God bless, I actually love them. I learned something from them. So maybe, hopefully, seeing the process we're in right now with people maybe not showing their best selves, but that's not inherently who they are deep down. And it's just a facet of themselves that they're showing. It's not who they are. So I'm hoping we get a little bit more compassionating as we come out of this cycle. There's real hope.
Yeah, I think if we can, Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 agreements, right? I think one of those primary things is don't take anything personally. I mean, we're in such a state of overwhelm, the majority of humanity at this point, with all that has happened in the last few years. So the less we can take things personally and actually think about, what is this person going through? Before I react in any way or respond to them, it's like, what could their day be like? What could their childhood have been like? What could they be going through? Like, what could have happened to them or their family members, or, anything in the last year and a half or ever, actually, right? So it's like, if we can kind of be in that mindset moving forward, I'm like you. I mean, I'm hopeful. I kind of feel like when you look at the things that have happened on the planet, and the amount of creativity and genius that resides in humanity,
Mm-hmm.
we should be unstoppable, and we shouldn't feel like we have all these obstacles in our way, because I just think there is so much divinity and genius and compassion that it will turn the corner. But we do need to be present with it. We do need to do our part and take action. And we need to own the ability and capability and responsibilities that we do have. So um yeah, I'm there with you on the hopeful for humanity.
Well, you just made me think of when I started writing this book. I gave myself permission to be open and receptive to every single criticism. And it went bigger than that. I've been receiving, input about how I could be better. And every single one of us, we're all imperfect, but in this moment, we're all perfect who we're supposed to be. So we're perfect even with our imperfections. So maybe that's another bit of advice for right now. It's like, so instead of pointing fingers and looking about the imperfections in others, if you go, okay, and look at what some of your imperfections are, boy, that's a really good place to start. And if I'm doing it and you're doing it and she's doing it and he's doing it, then it builds.
And I think part of that is a function of people starting to look at these challenges as big as they seem, that we look at them in a way that is, they're actually designed to move us to the next best iteration of who we are. Because I do believe, like, you were both saying that, that creativity, that genius, that's our natural state. And that's why the systems that we have right now are crumbling, because they are the systems that are benefiting from that, small, divisive, combative, negative part of humanity. And they've been built on that. So that is why I believe they are now crumbling. And I say, let them crumble.
Let them fall down.
But it's interesting, even you can start catching yourself in small ways that you're doing it on, we are doing it. It's not just other people out there that are making judgments and throwing stones. You might start to catch yourself going, oh, I'm not being kind, or I'm being judgmental, or yes, what I just thought or said was really, really witty and very eviscerating, I don't know if it needs to go out into the world. And
Exactly.
I am capable of writing or thinking of really horrible things. And I specifically, writing about what you wanted to see in the world. I was very clear. I didn't want to write too much about strife and combativeness. I want to see less of that in the world. And what does it look like when we listen and respond and respect to each other? Like, what does that look like? How does that move us forward? So whenever I wanted to put something a little bit too edgy or a little too critical, there was things I took out. I was like, oh, it's such a good slam, I'm going to take it out. I me and what I was responsible for. So I tried.
Yeah, I think that is, a key point. It's like the more we can catch ourselves and have an insight as to what we're doing, the more kind we can be in the world. So there's a couple questions that we ask people all the time. And one of them is, if you could go back in time and offer your younger self some advice, what would that be?
I was just reading that question this morning and I was thinking how I would answer it. So an odd thing came up. So I'm just going to go with the odd thing. So I'm a child of the 70s and 80s. And in the book, my younger character, she uses a reusable menstrual pad and like a diva cup. Okay. I'm angry at myself that I didn't do that so much younger in my life. Like, what? The money, the chemicals, the landfill. It just made me crazy. So I cringe. I don't even want to know how much I spent and what impact I made on the world. So yes, younger self, go back in time and get some reusable pads.
We actually did a epic sustainability about exactly that.
It seems so minor and weird, but it's impacts.
Yeah. When you think about how many women there are in the world, and then you think about what's in the landfill, yeah, that's a pretty major impact, I think.
Yeah. We don't need commercials for it. We don't need trucks. We don't need box manufacturers. We just need some availability, and you get it and you keep it, and it's no big deal.
And plastic wrap and plastic applicators.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
See, the entire product development process needs to come from a sustainability perspective and not, where it's been in the past. I know there are people doing that, and we have a podcast that has contributed to some of that mindset. So yes, yes, that's all I'm gonna say is yes.
So now let's fast forward into the future, and the 3 books are done. They're out there in the world, and maybe you have grandkids. And so what do you see as your legacy, your biggest contribution to our community and the world at large?
I'm not going to stop growing things, and I'm not going to. Once you get a microphone, God help me, I asked for it. Now I have it. So I want to keep using it. I'd like to be a part of getting our agriculture. I'd like to, try to get more seeds in more people's hands and more quality food. So I think I might want to do some cooking and feeding people and teaching people. And there's going to be a lot more music in my future. I put a lot of music into the book and dancing. One of the characters says something like, "I dance a lot. I hope it's not going to be a problem." And I think I'd like to be going back to doing some healing work, and try to help people get into a better body, mindset, well-being state through music and dance and food. So I have a feeling I'll continue on that path. And so, yeah, it's kind of hard to know what the next thing is going to be. But I have so many different ideas that came up during the book. And so I'm trying to just help those things come to life too. And this is the collaboration phase I'm moving into. Writing a book is very solitary, but How You Fix the World is collaboration. So most likely I'll be involved in, I think I'll have my fingers in way more pies than I currently have right now. But the children will be older and I can expand and see how big, how much effect I can have on the world. So hopefully more opportunities will continue to come through and I'll find ways to be of use.
Fingers in the pies, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Pie is good. Well, thank you, Portia, so much.
Oh, I'm sorry, you broke up.
I said, thank you, Portia, so much for joining us today. And can you tell everyone how they can get a hold of you, your website, where they can get the book?
So my website is Portia, Portia, the letter D, Sykes at outlook.com. The book is available pretty much everywhere. Any bookstore in the world can get it. I just saw it's on sale in Sweden. It's on Amazon and Target and Barnes and Noble, and then locally, Maria's has it, Magpies has it, Fort Lewis Library has it. So, and here in Farmington, it's at Feet of Clay and Artifacts Gallery and Amy's Bookcase.
Great. Please go get the book. Eat the Moon, PortiaDSykes.com. And for more information on EPIC, go to epicconsciousliving.com. Thank you, Portia.
Thank you.
Thank you.